Welcome to Perfect-ish, where it's not about having perfect time management, but about perfecting your relationship with time. I'm your host, Callie Brigham, and every week we'll talk all things time and how to maximize it without burnout or guilt. Whether we're chatting with an expert or I'm sharing my 20 years of time management experience, you'll learn simple strategies to make every moment count. Here, it's all about getting close to perfect-ish. So let's synchronize our watches and dive in. Hi, friend. Okay, it seemed like every conversation that I've had lately went something like this. Do you know Traci Peterson? You need to know Traci Peterson. Have you heard of Traci Peterson? You need to be friends with Traci Peterson. I need to connect you and Traci Peterson. And let me tell you, they were right. And I must have some great friends, Traci Peterson, by the way, who would connect me with you. Like, that speaks a lot about your circle when they connect you with really awesome women. So guess what? I was like, all right, I'm going to know this Traci Peterson girl. And we first DM'd, we got on a Zoom, and then we realized we better stop talking on Zoom because we were going to waste all the good stuff.
Yes.
Nobody else was going to listen except for us. So we were like, no, this has to go on the airwaves. So let me tell you guys just a little bit about my girl, Traci. She is a powerhouse. You're going to notice that right away. International speaker, business owner, board certified nurse practitioner, a leader of one of the fastest growing teams around the world. But what really sets her apart, she is mastering and has mastered, because it kind of flows, right? The balance of being a high achieving entrepreneur and a present intentional mama. She's also the founder of Woman Lessons. We're going to talk about that. It's a mother-daughter movement helping young women build confidence and self-worth from the start. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, balancing work and motherhood, faith-filled kiddos, the lessons we probably wish we would have learned sooner, but hey, we're doing the best that we can now. So friend, grab your coffee, your LaCroix, your protein shake, whatever, and welcome to the show, Traci.
I'm so happy to be here, Callie, and you, same. I'm just like, everybody was like, you need to meet Callie, you need to meet Callie. And we just became super fast friends. I love when you get introduced to somebody and instantly you're like, we're literally like the same person. We want the same things. And we're here to make an impact in people's lives. So I'm just grateful to be here today with you.
Same here. Traci, I pray every day. Well, I pray a couple things. Well, I prayed a lot of things. One of the things I pray is that the right person would listen to my podcast, because you never know who's listening today. But the second thing I pray is that God would put me in the right room with the right woman, or the right rooms with the right women. And so super thankful for that. Yeah, there was just a connection, an alignment, an understanding from the beginning. And as we get started here, I think part of it for me, Traci, was that I consider myself right now to be in my and era, just like you. Yeah. I've got career, I've got other things that I'm doing, missions that I'm on. I've got my kids that are really part of my legacy, right, at the end of the day. So I've got a lot of things going on, and so do you. So my and era, which I think is awesome, and it's also challenging.
Yes.
And so I just want to start in that direction a little bit today because, as we've mentioned, as everybody can see, there's a high performance kind of level of a gal that you are, and that I am, and that I know our listeners are. Yeah. And that can cause a little bit of disconnect. It can cause some guilt. It can cause maybe moments where we feel like we're dropping the ball. So does that relate? Does that resonate with you at all? And what would be some things that we could encourage someone in today?
Yeah. That's such a great question. And it reminds me of when I very first started in my entrepreneurial experience. And I remember coming into, my background is as a nurse practitioner, right? So very much a medical centric field. And then I stepped into entrepreneurship, and I remember just having this big vision for myself where I was like, okay, like, I think sometimes women say we say women can have it all. And it's like, yes, we can have it all, but we can't do it all at 100% of the time. And we can't do it alone. And so I think that is a critical piece to not feeling guilty and not feeling disconnected, is to realize that, yes, you can be a present, connected mother and be an awesome, successful businesswoman. It's not it's not you choose one or the other. We have to rewrite that story and that narrative that you have either one or the other, but you can't have both. And so I love that you talk about your and era, because there is this big, beautiful, expansive and in there, but it's also going to look messy. Like when you are a present, connected mother and when you're a successful business owner or entrepreneur, there's a lot of failings in there. And I think it's such a good thing to normalize falling short, because I think we have this idea of the present connected mother has to look perfect. The business woman has to look perfect and have it all together. The truth is that just does not exist. That idea of perfect, I mean, your podcast name says it all. Like it literally is. That ish is the failings in between, right? And so
yeah, we live in the ish, don't we? We don't live in the perfect. We
do.
live in the ish.
We
Right?
do. We live
that.
in the ish. And I think that's so important to wrap our heads around, because I believe that failing, quote unquote, I'm making air quotes if you're listening to this on audio, but the failings and the imbalances that sometimes we feel in our life, I have a saying that imbalance is power. Why is it power? Imbalance can be power because I then can look at it and make a micro adjustment. Because if I'm feeling an imbalance, what people don't realize is when they look at somebody, let's say you're in a room, you're standing at the back of the room and somebody's at the very front of the room on a stage and they're doing a handstand. You would look at them from that perspective and you would say, that person is balanced. They're balancing on their hands. But then as you slowly take a step closer and a step closer towards the stage and a step closer and a step closer, you start to realize all of the micro adjustments that those hands are doing, that her body is doing, that her legs are doing, that her core is doing in order to give the appearance of balance. Balance is full of so many micro adjustments. And that's what I help, women to realize, is that it's a constant series of micro adjustments. And I think every high performing woman out there could relate to this, that maybe we get in our lane and maybe we're just like drilling it down in work and we're like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. And then we're like, oh my gosh, like I feel that little ping in my heart. And maybe I feel like I'm neglecting my family, or I'm neglecting another one of my certain priorities that I have, right? That's okay, because imbalance is power. If I feel a little bit of that imbalance, then I say, ooh, what lesson did I learn there? Okay, I'm going to make this small micro adjustment so I don't feel like maybe I neglected my children in that situation. And the opposite is true too. When we're being a present and connected mother, if we're feeling this ping of like, I'm letting like this business ball like fall and drop, like, okay, how can I make a micro adjustment and then maybe not let it get to that point again? As long as we learn from the experience, there are no failures. There's just micro adjustments.
Okay, so in just a second, if it's okay, I'm going to have you share maybe a couple micro adjustment examples that someone could take. And while you think about that, two things. One of my best friends says failure is a teacher, which I love, right? Mm-hmm. But the other thing, Traci, you'll appreciate this. Especially when my kids were just a little bit younger, they're teens now, 14 and 16, but we would ask them questions at the dinner table, right? You can't ever ask, how was your day? That's never going to end up well. But we would ask, how were you brave? How were you kind? How were you a leader? And then the fourth question we would ask was, how did you fail today? So good. And let me just tell you, that was their favorite question, which sounds crazy, right? Why would a kid want to talk about that? But it released shame from it.
Yes. Yeah.
And hiding it. And what we learned, Traci, is they would either give an example of something that was not their fault at all. Like they did everything right and they still weren't picked, or but what they learned is that sometimes it is out of your control. But what you can control is what happens next, right? And the other thing they would learn, Traci, is sometimes they messed up, right? They made a bad choice, or they didn't think through. And guess what they learned? Like, I don't like the way that, I'm not going to do that again.
Yes.
And they processed through the whole thing, just sitting eating their Annie's mac and cheese or whatever they were eating that night. So I love that you are shining a light on that maybe some of the best things we can do is notice these little things that go wrong or a little failure or how we're feeling our emotions. So yeah, what would you describe for somebody that's thinking, okay, this resonates, but what do you mean? What could a micro adjustment mean?
Yeah. Such a good question. I mean, I think I know you're really important, like you're really keyed in on time management. So I think a lot of times when there is that feeling of maybe neglect or imbalance is because we haven't planned and we don't have a plan and we're not executing the plan. Right? We're kind of just trying to fly by the seat of our pants. So I love that you brought up that the awareness piece is so critical. It's so key. I mean, if you're not aware of it, if you're not aware of how you feel in your body or what sensations are coming up, then you're not really going to make many changes. So I think keying in and cluing in on what your heart is telling you, what your body is telling you. But I think having a plan, I think goes a long way, because oftentimes for me, I mean, I tend to be a little bit more like ADD, kind of all over the place. And so when I do feel those moments of feeling out of balance, most of the time it's because I didn't have a plan going in and I didn't execute the plan. Another micro adjustment, these are like my like high offenses, like my repeat offenders, if you will. Like I'm just thinking about myself, is communication. I think oftentimes if I am under communicating and just going throughout my day, and it's not just communicating with my spouse, yes, that is important, but it's also communicating with my children. That can come back to even communicating why I'm on my phone, or what I'm doing while I'm on that phone, right? So if my child says to me like, "Mom, you're always on your phone," or "Why are you on your phone?" Right? And then you're like, "Oh, mom guilt. That feels like the worst, you know?" And then I try to explain the why behind it. So I explain to them why I'm on my phone, what I'm doing on my phone. So then I have to stop and make myself aware. Hey, yeah, from their perspective, I probably am on my phone a lot. So then how can I get curious to solve that problem and make the micro adjustment? So a micro adjustment would be, okay, what if I just for a season test out me just sending messages or doing my work and what I do on my phone from my office? Or I'm trying to do my work and those things not in front of them, so I'm on my phone in front of them, and see how that goes. So I think it's having this curiosity to problem solve. And I'm a big believer in plan, do, review, and improve, right? Like you make a plan, you do it, you review it. Is it working? Is it not? Are they saying that less? Are we feeling more connected because I'm not on my phone when I'm in front of them? And then I improve it. If it's working well, keep doing it. If it's not, make an adjustment. Another micro adjustment, again, a repeat offender that comes to my mind is, especially in balancing like entrepreneurship and business and family, is really when my focus is on my family, have it be 100% on my family, where I don't have a split brain where I'm trying to do both. And sometimes I have to create a physical boundary and a physical barrier where sometimes I even have to and I did this literally yesterday. I turned off my phone. So it's not just enough that I put it in a drawer, but I had to turn off my phone. It's not just being in work mode, but I had to turn off my phone, put it in a drawer, out of sight, out of mind, so that I could 100% focus on my children or what I was doing, in that moment. And then the opposite is true as well. When I sit down to do income bringing activities in my business, I am not going to allow my mind to be split on what the kids are doing or what I'm missing or whatever. It's sort of like you can't serve two masters, right? It's like if you're sitting down, be 100% focused, you're going to be much more effective. You're going to be much more efficient when you do that, because they've actually done studies that shown that that multitasking makes you far less productive. You make more mistakes, and the outcomes that you produce are far to a lesser. What am I trying to say? They're at a lower value than if you were just 100% focused. So your output goes way down. So multitasking is a farce. It's a fallacy. It doesn't exist. And yeah, those are just some quick micro adjustments that sort of come to my mind that I'm a repeat offender on.
I was going to say, I knew without prepping you for that, you were definitely going to have some things because we have not hit the ultimate yet. Neither you nor I, no matter how far ahead we are in our business, we are still evolving. We're still learning. And part of it is, and we'll get to this in a minute, that so are our kids, right? So what our kids needed from us when they were toddlers is different as they're getting into their preteen, and especially our daughters, which I know we're going to come to in just a minute. I loved, and I take notes while I'm doing this. So if you see me ever looking down, I'm like voraciously taking notes. I love the curiosity piece.
Mm-hmm.
I don't just love the curiosity piece because I like to say that we're scientists, not judges, right? Yeah. So when we're curious, though, it not only removes that judgment on ourselves, but it creates the brainstorming process. I call it the not can I, but how can I? And that's exactly what you were showing us in what you do. It's not saying I'm a bad mom or I'm a bad entrepreneur. It's just, you know what? How could I be better? How could I make this shift?
Yeah.
And let's transition to, Traci, not just for what somebody else might do, but for what I need for what's best for my family. So I know a lot of times one of the issues that we have that consumes our time, it consumes our energy, is that comparison to other people and what they're doing. And that whether it's an imposter, whether it's I could never match up. So when we're high performing women, we might have that self-criticism. We might have that comparison. And I know you've mentored so many women in mind shifts in this area. And let's speak to that just a little bit. How can we run our own race? How can we be in our own lane, still be successful when all this pressure is there?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And I loved saying that you shared that you're a scientist, not a judge. And I think oftentimes when we as women are trying to live in our and era, if it doesn't work out the first time, we're just like, throw my hands up. See, told you it's not for me. Like Susie Q over there, she can do it, but I'm not that, right? And we immediately go into victim mode and into comparison mode. And so when I teach my mothers and daughters about this idea of comparison, I say we want to live in observation, not comparison. Now, there's a difference between observation and comparison because we talked about the value of having an awareness, right? We're not saying bury your head in the sand and just pretend like everything is magical and everything is great. No, it's living in observation, not in comparison. So an observer living in observation can look like, oh, Callie manages her time so well. Like that is amazing. I wonder, curiosity, right? I wonder what her systems look like. I wonder what courses she took. I wonder what podcast she's listening to. I wonder what research she's done to try to do that, right? Comparison would be, Callie is so good at time management. I'm terrible at time management. Like she must have been that way at birth. Like, I don't even know how she does that because I could never do that. And I can never manage my time. I can't even get out the door on time. My kids, it spirals. So comparison is when you take an observation and you personalize it and you internalize it for what it means about you. When in reality, my observation of you, Callie, has nothing to do with me, my worth, my value, nothing. And I believe that comparison, I mean, I know you're a believer and we're, faith-driven women. I believe that comparison is a massive tool of the adversary. That if he can pit women against other women, he strips us of our power. He literally strips us of our power if we start living in comparison, because then we go down the self-criticism, self-judgment spiral instead of really stepping into our potential and who we know that God made us to be, called us to be, and who we're supposed to be. And I do feel like in order to combat that tool of comparison, it is so critical for us to remember who we are, to own our divine gifts, and I can honor my divine gifts while I'm also honoring yours, Callie, because we're two different women and two different people. And let's talk about women as a whole. Like no two of us are exactly the same. What works well for you or what fills you and fuels you might be different. And so I think it's just taking that ownership over our divine gifts. It's taking ownership and bringing in the partnership with God over our life to help you to discover what your divine gifts are, and then multiply those, magnify those. And that's what we do, in women lessons with our high performing women and their daughters between the ages of 9 and 12, is we help the moms and the daughters identify what those gifts are, and then, pour belief and love and light in all of the women around them. And it's such a beautiful container to be a part of, because I literally have seen, and I've had this little witness that I'm seeing this generation change, like the next generation change right before my eyes. And it really does start with the moms, and it starts with the women in their homes, and it's leading by example, and learning to love yourself and lean on God so that you can, confidently raise that next generation of leaders.
So true. A mentor of mine once said that our DNA stands for do not argue. So God made you the way he made you because of who he wants you to reach, Traci. And he put the children in your home that only you could mother. And he put the women on your team, and he put the patients there, right?
And he gave me the challenges, like all of the challenges that you go through as a woman, as a wife, as a mother, as a daughter of God, like as an individual. All of these things make you like so unique and perfectly made and created to be who God needs you to be. But I do think, Callie, there is this idea, and I would even say within the Christian community, just because we're commanded, I mean, in the Bible, in Matthew 5:48, like, be therefore perfect, even as I am perfect. And so we think we have to have it all figured out. We have to be perfect now. But I love that we get to be perfect-ish, right? Through the process. Because if we really look back, the root of perfect actually means complete or whole. And so that's what I'm like the most passionate about, because I've been through seasons of perfectionism. I say that I'm a recovering perfectionist, and I am here to help women to feel whole in all of their roles that they play as a woman, as an individual, as a mom, as a daughter of God, as a spouse, and in their work. And if you can feel whole and complete in all of those things, I feel like you've won. And it's not just about winning, but you feel accomplished and you feel aligned, and you're able to truly fulfill your potential that God placed inside of you when you can feel whole and complete in all of those roles.
Whole and complete. And one other interesting thing too is if you write out the word PERFECT, we automatically think it reads perfect, and it does. But also in the English language, it also means perfect. And that is a process. That is a doing towards a goal. Maybe you won't even achieve it, but it is a process to get there. And that's what we're about. And that's what we're taking time for. And part of the reason, Traci, it's so important to you and it's so important to me is that we do have little people in our home, and we have young ladies in our home that are watching us. They're watching us make these micro adjustments. They're watching us do some things great because God just gave that to us as a talent, and then some things maybe not so great.
Yep.
And because they're watching us, I know you've taken that to another level. So now's the time. Tell us. I was just so charmed by this, so delighted by this, so empowered by this. Tell us woman lessons. We want to know the origin, and then where is this going?
Yeah. So I love that you say that these little ones are watching us, because they are. And I'm reminded of a time where my kids now at the time of this recording are 12, 10, and 7. So when my oldest, her name is Quinn, she was 9 at the time, so 3 years ago, We were just in regular after school activities. I was sitting doing dishes, which I never do. My husband's the dish doer, but for whatever reason, I was doing dishes that day. And Quinn was sitting at our counter. And I remember pulling out a plate. And in my mind, whenever I'm doing dishes, I don't know, it kind of like puts me in a meditative state, but I'm like, plate, cup, fork. And I remember that fork, that one fork that gets stuck like underneath, like in the dishwasher. I'm like, how does that fork ever even get there? But so I grab this fork and I stand up. I'm holding this fork in my hand. And my daughter, Quinn, so sweetly says, "Hey, Mom, can we do woman lessons?" And I was kind of taken back and I was like, sure. Like, yeah, we could do woman lessons. What does that even mean? I'm sure I could figure it out. I'm a woman, And she so thoughtfully, Callie, said to me, well, I want to learn how to do my makeup. I want to learn how to put together an outfit. And I want to learn how to cook. And I said to myself, I was like, that is so sweet. Yes, I can teach her all of those things. I can do that. And then internally, I was like, that's also kind of sad. Is that the only thing? And I went down a little bit of that self-critical spiral where I was like, is that all that she thinks it means to be a woman, is what we look like and what we wear? Like, is that all that I've shown her? Is that all that I've modeled for her? And so as I was standing there with that fork in my hand, I call these 1-minute moments. And I think we have these 1-minute moments as moms all the time, where I could have just said, yeah, sure, I can teach you woman lessons. I'll teach you how to do your makeup and we'll put together an outfit. And that would have been fine, Callie. That would have been fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But in that moment when I was holding that fork in my hand, I felt like I was at a fork in the road where time sort of slowed down. And I decided to take this other path that allowed me to get a little bit introspective on what are those lessons and what are those things that I've learned as a woman, and more importantly, the type of woman that I want her to grow up to be, and the woman that I'm still growing up to be, where I have true confidence, not confidence that's given to me from other people or confidence that I try to find in worldly things, but what is a truly confident woman, one that finds validation within herself instead of looking to other people for that. So I started thinking, and I came up with 7 woman lessons to help high-performing women and their daughters look inward and upward for their validation. So it's finding that self-love, learning how to love all of yourself, and then learning how to love and lean on God and trust Him. And it's in that partnership that, you can overcome self-criticism. You can overcome comparison. And the 7 women lessons are really powerful. And we do retreats twice a year. We have one coming up June 6th and 7th. I have a podcast called Woman Lessons, How to Be and Raise a Truly Confident Woman. And it's just been the most fulfilling passion project that I've ever done, because honestly, it was God-led and it was Quinn-led. And I do feel like our children can be our greatest teachers if we allow them to be.
And you in that moment were able to pause, Traci, and really be obedient. I mean, in my opinion, it was the Holy Spirit just utilizing that moment. And you didn't rush through it, because that surface answer, and again, that would be fine. The way when a woman feels good on the outside, it does affect her on the inside. But it was so much deeper than that. And you were talking about that a minute ago, living in observation. And you could tell there was a deeper meaning there. And Traci, what an important moment and season in her life, because I know I've done the research too. And especially at 12 years old is kind of the kicker, but I know it starts before that. That is when everything plummets for most young women in our society. Everything about them starts to plummet. And of course, as a nurse practitioner, you understand the hormone piece and of course the society, but thank God He stopped you when you still had that beautiful little opportunity to start to shift her, and now you've taken it for other people.
Yeah, that little 1-minute moment shifted everything. And there are so many God moments through the whole thing, But when I started kind of thinking about this and ruminating on it and developing it, somebody said, well, what age range are you going to do? And it just kind of rolled off my tongue. I was like, well, 9 to 12. Quinn started asking me these questions when she was 9, and 12 just kind of makes sense to my brain. It's like kind of right before all the hormones go crazy. But then again, God moment, I start doing research, and I discovered that Erickson, who is like a child psychologist, in some of his work. So his work in psychosocial development, these children between the ages of 9 and 12 are going through this internal battle between identity and confusion. So they are literally trying to find out who they are. And they want to try on all the different hats, right? And it's not, yes, it can be a little bit more surface, like, am I an athlete? Am I artistic? Am I a good friend, right? Like some of those higher level identity pieces. But if we want to dig a little bit deeper, it is their identity. Like, who am I? Because they're starting to see themselves outside of their immediate family, that they have an identity outside of their home and outside of that core nucleus of their family. And so it really is the time when they are starting to go out into the world and start to have those friendships, and going and playing at friends' houses and doing activities and birthday parties and all those things. And they really are trying to discover who they are. And that's why the very first lesson in Women Lessons is remember who you are and whose you are. So it's not this outside conditioning. It's not who society tells you that you are, because if we're being honest, society is confused. And there's a lot of mixed messages out there that are being pushed on our kiddos, whether or not we're doing our very best to protect them inside of our home. And we really do need to arm them with an internal compass and an internal identity and a God identity, that they are a daughter of God with a divine eternal potential. And that's what we do. That's what we do at Women Lessons. And yes, like, we have some of the higher level stuff, and we've done makeup classes, and we do, we've done the fashion styling things, and we're going to do a super fun styling thing coming up in June. But it's the deeper work that is just foundational to protecting these girls in a fallen world, and but we have so much fun, and we do so many awesome activities to really cement these. So it's not like a heavy, like, oh, let's get down into it, and it is very like fun and lighthearted, lots of movement activity. Like, nothing is ever longer, than 20 minutes, because their attention span is so short. We do a service project, we do a dance party, we do all these great things there. But I just think that identity piece is everything. I'm like, if I could do nothing else as a mother but teach my daughter who she belongs, like who's her father, like that, like who she really is and her divine origins, the rest will fall into place. Like, if she has that true confidence that's grounded in her eternal divine identity, the rest will fall into place. And I have confidence in that.
And you're right. It is a groundedness. It is touchstone. It is, and in a world that doesn't value truth, truth can be whatever you want it to be. Mm-hmm. That does not feel secure. And now she has a security and really understanding and knowing the truth. Well, what about the mamas, Traci? I think about maybe women that did not grow up with a mom like you. And so here they are wanting to protect and rescue and, be there for their daughters. I imagine there's a lot of healing that happens with the moms too.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Because you're so right. And I believe that every mother is well-intentioned, and not every woman has, or had that example in their home of a truly confident woman. And that's the reality. And I feel like every woman and every mother is so well-intentioned, but oftentimes we can inadvertently project our insecurities onto our daughters, not meaning to. I mean, I know I do, even with all that I know, but I have, again, that word awareness that comes back around. If I have an awareness of my insecurities and I'm actively working on them, isn't that the model that we want to teach our daughters? That if there's something that's out of place and I don't feel confident, like I can work on it and I can always constantly be improving. And I think that piece, it reminds me of when I was solidifying the 7 woman lessons. And the first 6, Callie, just like I rattled off. I was like, oh, I'm going to teach her, remember who you are and whose you are, own your divine gifts, be self more, not self less, like build yourself and who you are. And I just rattled off these 6. And the last one I did not want to touch with a 10-foot pole. I was like in denial. I was like, I can't go there. I can't go there. And I felt like I couldn't go there because the 7th woman lesson is you are more than your body. And I felt like it was because I hadn't tackled it. I hadn't conquered it yet. And so how could I possibly teach it if I haven't conquered it? And I remember one morning laying in my bed, and the first thing when I came to a level of consciousness, I remember that I laid in my bed and I lifted up my shirt and looked at my stomach, because the way that my stomach looked was going to tell me whether or not I was good yesterday or bad yesterday, or if I had made good choices or bad choices. And then that spiral of self-criticism, like, you lazy, here you are again, you're disgusting, better spend double time on the treadmill today. Well, I'm not eating anything today. I'm off sugar. I'm never doing that again, right? Like that whole spiral happened. Stood up, walked over to my mirror, lifted up my shirt again, and again, the spiral was starting. And I remember vividly in that moment saying, I would never let Quinn talk to herself like this. Never, let alone a dear friend, would I ever let talk to themselves this way. So why is it okay for me to do it? And as a high-performing woman, I thought that negative self-critical voice was kind of like my secret sauce. It was like my internal motivator, driver to get stuff done. You cannot force your way into alignment. You cannot force your way into perfection. You have to self-love your way into it. And what I realized is I was just self-bullying. That is what it was. It was not my secret sauce or my secret weapon. It was simply self-bullying. That's all it was. And I knew that day that I had to master this, because I knew that if I didn't, then she would be doomed to repeat the patterns of my past, the thing that I couldn't overcome or that I wasn't actively working through. And it's not that I can now teach her that, because I've risen above that and I learned to love my body at every single stage and phase. And I went on a very specific way of how I did that. It's that I was on the journey. And I think that's what moms need to hear is it's as long as you're on the journey and you're, and I don't love the word try, because try to me is kind of like halfsies, like I'm half and half. I'm just going to try. That you're actively moving forward and actively pursuing becoming that best version of yourself. You can teach through example. That's what you want to teach your daughter, is that, I'm working on these things and this is a thing that I want, and I'm making conscious decisions to move towards it. But I think that is why it had to be the last lesson, because it was probably the one that I struggled with the most. And it's touchy, right? It's like it's such a sensitive topic, and you don't want to offend anybody, and you want to honor everybody for where they're at. But I do believe that we need to invest in our vessels, and we need to be good stewards over our bodies. And, we're commanded to, love God, love our neighbor as we love ourselves. And loving yourself is not selfish and it's not prideful. It's loving yourself for all that God created you to be. The strengths of yourself, the weaknesses that you have. It's really learning to love all of yourself. So you are more than your body is actually one of my very most favorite things to teach now, because I think it's because I was afraid of it. It's because I was scared of it. That it's just like ingrained in my heart, you know?
And that's what I was going to say. We talked earlier about, shining a light on things, right? And Traci, the moment that you chose to do that, when you have been describing women lessons, I'm like, yeah, that sounds great. I feel like jazzed up. And the minute you started to talk about that, it completely, I could feel you. And I could feel me. I could feel me in your story.
Yeah.
And thank God you chose to push through that feeling of shame or discomfort or hiding, because now look, I mean, you didn't even say all 7 because you couldn't wait to skip to this last one to talk about it, and how freeing. The truth sets us free. How freeing to be able to talk about it and to be able to pass that on.
Yeah.
It gave it purpose. And so it wasn't wasted.
No.
The feelings that you had and the years that you had or the days that you had feeling that certain way now have such purpose instead of pain in them.
Oh yeah. Well, and your pain becomes your purpose, right? And that's the thing, is I think so many of those ideas of knowing that you are more than your body. I mean, it goes back to when I was 15 and I went to my mom and I said, "Mom, I want to feel confident for this dance that's coming up. And I want to feel confident in my dress. What should I do?" And she did the best she could with the resources that she had, right? Callie, I was 115 pounds when I asked her that question. Okay. And her response to me was, "Well, I can make bigger salads. Like, I can make my salads bigger." And I was like, "Let's make salads bigger." Right. Which then just reiterated the fact of I need to eat less in order to feel more confident. That's maybe not what she intended, but that was the message that I received. And then that started a 20 plus year battle with disordered eating patterns. And disordered eating doesn't have to just be anxiety or depression, or not anxiety or depression. Oh my gosh, anorexia or bulimia.
Anorexia or bulimia.
But it can be orthorexia, like a hyperfixation and a hyper focus on being overly healthy, right? And so it just shows you that these small little moments, these 1-minute moments that we have with our daughters, like they mean things, and they can set certain patterns or parameters that can continue to play out. Now, again, I don't hold anything against my mom. My mom just did what, Callie? What she saw her mom do.
Yeah.
And what her mom did, what she saw her mom do. And so it's these generational patterns that, for whatever reason, Callie, I do feel like our generation has been tasked with breaking some unhealthy generational patterns. And I would hope that every generation would be that way. I want my daughter, Quinn, whatever things I haven't worked through that maybe I'm projecting onto her, that when she goes through and that she does her work that she needs to do, that she'll also be able to break some of those things. But I do feel like our generation has been tasked with that, whether it's that we live in the connection age, that we have access to podcasts, that we have access to so much information, that we now have a greater awareness of it so that we can do better for that next generation. And that's what Women Lessons is all about. It's like, let's create an environment where we're not just helping the girls, but we're helping the moms and daughters together. Because I will tell you, moms have so many awarenesses that come to their mind, like, oh my gosh, I can totally see how I do that. Maybe I shouldn't talk about, certain body parts the way that I am. And maybe, oh my gosh, I am comparing and I'm not just living in observation. So again, an awareness of these things is not to make you feel guilty. It's not to shame yourself. Those two things are a choice. But when you feel that little ping, make a micro adjustment. And she'd be like, okay, well, I'm not going to do that anymore. And I'm going to say this instead. Right. But I feel like so much of it starts from within, and we have to take ownership as mothers over, over our own lives, over our own insecurities. And again, be moving forward and progressing forward. And Woman Lessons gives you a place where you can do that side by side with your daughters. And it's so much fun doing it too. I mean, personal development, like with your little, you don't have to go to like a business conference to do that. You get to do it side by side with your daughter, where you're going to feel connected. You're going to create memories that you'll remember forever.
And, as I'm listening to, and yes, it sounds like so much fun, because it needs to be for that age, right? But it also needs to be for our age. And one of the things I thought of as you were talking is, I know not everybody listening has a daughter, and not everybody listening even has children. And some of what we're saying, we can speak to the 12-year-old us, or the 9-year-old us, or the 10-year-old us. It's not too late, Traci. It's Absolutely. Not too late. And you made that decision after 20, 25 years of behaving in the same pattern and following the same thing you'd always done. And then one day, I feel like you were speaking to your own 15-year-old self that day when you made that change. And so this isn't all skate. This is for everybody that's listening, whether you are modeling this for your own daughter, for your niece, for your granddaughter, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
So it's for our own 9-year-old or 10-year-old.
And isn't that the most amazing thing, Callie? I'm so glad you brought that up, is we can self-parent. We don't need to point fingers. We don't need to blame. We as adult women, we have the power. Like, we literally have the power to create whatever life, whatever outcome we want to have. And so exactly what you said, and I appreciate what you said, because I've never made that connection, because what I wish would have been said to me at that time is, Traci, you are so much more than your body. Your confidence should not lie in how you look in a dress. Let's talk more about how you're feeling. Why are you not feeling confident with who you are and who God created you to be? So literally, Woman Lessons is coming from that pain, and that pain turned into the purpose and helping moms and daughters avoid some of those pitfalls that I, had to go through and experience.
Well, thank you for being willing to use some of the sensitive things, and to be a voice for it. And for Quinn too.
Oh, my little Quinny.
What a blessing. What a blessing.
Such a blessing. Such a blessing. Those little kiddos.
I was going to say, she just changed the game. She flipped the game is what she did with that question. She didn't even realize it. Maybe she did, though. We got to give them a little bit more credit. Traci, I know people are going to want to have more of you. Okay. They're going to want more of you. Where can they find you? What resources do you have? Let's give them all the goods. This will all be in the show notes too, friend, but tell them where they can find you, get more of you. I know you've got some resources. I know you've got discount code, all kinds of fun things. So
yes. So I would say connect with me on Instagram. My Instagram is @tpete. And then on there, I actually have a free energy generator guide for you. So it's completely free. And this is if you're feeling overwhelmed or burnt out, or you need help, like nailing down what your values are and your top priorities. And then more importantly, how you can not only make boundaries, but then honor and keep those boundaries moving forward so that you can maintain your peace. That is a free guide. And it is in-depth and robust. It's not just some stupid freebie, where you're like, that was created on Canva in like 2 seconds. Like, thank you, ChatGPT.
Yeah, exactly.
This is like, literally, it's like the whole lesson, and it's very, very robust. And then if you want to go to tracipeterson.com so you can learn more about our events and get your ticket, then I am going to offer your listeners, Callie, a code that gives them 10% off their ticket, which is so great. And so the code for that is perfect. So again, you can connect with me and that free energy generator guide on Instagram @tpete. It's just in like my little header there. And then also go to tracipeterson.com. Traci's with an I, Peterson's with an ON.com. And then just use the code PERFECT and save some money and come to Utah. It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous in June. We go on a beautiful nature hike on Saturday morning, and it's going to be epic. It's just going to be epic. It always is. And so meaningful and connecting.
I've been to Utah, Traci, in December, and it was, for this Florida girl, it was beautiful then, but I'm thinking that June is probably a little bit more my style.
Oh my gosh. Callie, you need to come out.
Lighter too. I know.
You need to come out with Vanessa and Shayna. We need to make this happen.
And our daughters, Traci, because we're going to take woman lessons to the next stage because we have teenage daughters. So let's keep that going for these teens. We're going to collab on that. We're going to collab on that. I know it.
We are. We're going to do a 13 to 15-year-old cohort probably in the next year. So
let's go. I love it. Well, Traci, I always have a little gift to give you. It's not a real gift, but it's still great. And it is the gift of a bonus hour. So this hour doesn't have to come out of any other hour of your week or your day. If I gave you this extra 60 minutes, Traci, what would you do with it?
Can I take my 60 minutes to Mexico?
You can take it wherever you want.
Yep, okay.
Brilliant.
I would either be in Cabo or Kauai on the beach in a cabana with my notebook and like just the crashing waves. That's it. Like I love to just like brain dump. That's when like divine downloads come. But that to me is just like peace. It's just, and then maybe my kids playing in the water, but I can't hear them. Like they're just out there and I can see them and
every so often you look up and you go, oh, but they're not asking you for anything.
No, that's
or getting you or getting you Sandy or anything like that. Okay,
exactly.
got it.
Exactly.
Sounds idyllic. And you know, my prayer is always that in some form or fashion in the near future that you would be able to get that hour. Now, I don't live in Cabo or Kauai, but I do live on the beach. We're going to have to do a swap because I can just leave here and go right across the street and hear the waves crash in the ocean. So we're going to swap Florida, Utah. If you don't get that hour before, I'm going to give you one when you come here.
I love it. Thank you for the gift that will come.
It's coming. And you have been a gift, Traci. All those people were right. You are the real deal. I did need you in my life. And now our listeners have you in their lives too. So thank you so much for your wisdom, your heart, your truth, your light today. You've been a gift.
Thank you, Callie.
Thank you, friends. So if you love this episode, and I know you did, go ahead and give us a 5-star rating and share it with a fellow mama who needs this, or just listen again for the little inside of you that needed it again too. So we're ready to take back your time and thrive in all the roles that God has given to us. So thanks again for listening. God bless. Thanks for tuning in to the Perfect-ish Time Management Podcast. Let's keep the fun going. Follow me on social and join our Facebook community. And if you're ready for some one-on-one time management coaching to reach the top of your game without burnout or guilt, I'd love to chat. Book a free interest call using the link in the show notes or send me a DM. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a 5-star review and share it with a friend who's ready to master their time too. Remember, we're in this together, making real progress towards becoming perfect-ish.